digital search has changed dramatically. Nobody is going to Google anymore and clicking down, 10 links to get what they want. If you're a local business and you're not showing up in the map pack, or if you are a digital business and you're not getting quoted in the AI answer snippets, or they can't find you on ChatGPT, you are missing a big percentage of web traffic.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we bring you conversations with leaders who are making an impact in business and our communities. Today, I'm here with Jenna Nelson. She's a brand strategist and digital marketer, and she's also the founder of Her AI Agency. Thanks for being here today, Jenna.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and I definitely want to get into all the aspects of working with AI, whether you're working in corporate or whether you're an entrepreneur or have a small business. I want to get into that, but I want to get into a little bit about you first.
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey into working with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, honestly, if you'd told me years ago that this is what I'd be doing, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. I come from a brand strategy, digital marketing background, and I was doing that for 10, 15, 20 years. And really just, I truly remember the day that I Googled, like, what is ChatGPT? And just kind of started digging into it myself, and seeing how I could kind of integrate it into my own business and my own workflows. And as I did that, I started seeing the value in it and how much time it was saving me and how many things were possible. So I started, integrating it for, some of my existing clients. And hey, early on, years ago when, we had a lot less than we have now in the space, started integrating it, and really about 2 years ago just kind of went doubled down on the AI strategy and implementation concept, because it's scary and it's new and there's a lot going on in the space. And so I try to kind of filter out the noise for people, and help them find pathways to use it that actually make sense for their business.
Yeah, because the tools are there, they can be very easy to use, but without an underlying strategy on how you're using the tools and the outcomes you want to get from the tools, it's really easy to get pulled in a bunch of different directions.
It's really easy to just be playing with AI if you don't have, some real direction behind it, for sure.
Yeah, so you're passionate about helping create more women entrepreneurs, especially in tech.
Yeah.
Why do you think this gap exists with entrepreneurs, female founders in tech? And what's the big picture strategy you're using to close it?
Yeah, so a lot of it is funding. There's a huge funding gap between women-led businesses and women-founded businesses and male-founded businesses. And so that creates, that initial friction point where there just aren't as many female entrepreneurs and founders with the funding to really get to where they need to be. So that's kind of problem number one. Problem number two is obviously, the demands on women in our time tend to be a little bit different. The statistic is like, I think women on average work about 32 hours a week and men it's like 42. So there's just a gap there too in capacity and time and the amount of responsibilities we may have, at home versus, in a work environment. So both of those things kind of play together to create sort of the perfect storm of there just being a harder barrier to entry, I think, for female entrepreneurs. And so, really beyond that too, I think there aren't a lot of women in tech or women in the AI space kind of standing up and saying like, I'm going to figure this out for all of us and I'm going to, help all of us figure this, out in our business. So that's where, I kind of really stepped in. I love AI. I love experimenting with it and seeing what's possible. But that's not practical for most founders. They need to be working in their business discipline, not playing with AI tools. So my goal is to really, kind of filter all of that down, and give them something practical and functional to work with.
Yeah, I mean, it really is all about optimizing, right? You talked about optimizing your time. Any founder, but especially if you're a female founder and you are taking care of kids, you are running a household as well,
Right.
whatever it is you're doing that may limit your number of work hours, the amount of hours you can focus on your business. Optimization is the key, whether you use AI or any other tools to do that.
Absolutely.
And 3 years ago, 4 years ago, if you wanted to optimize using AI, you had to learn it. But now there are a number of great tools out there that out of the box are ready, but
Right.
then integrating those is really a challenge, right?
Yes. Yes. And I think that's the hardest part is that tech piece. I think there's a broader understanding of what, generative AI can do and, the possibilities there, but how do you get it to all connect with your CRM or connect, with the systems you use in your business? That part can be a little scary and a little tricky. And it's very technical. And that's what most people don't necessarily want to do. And frankly, like I don't want a founder, wasting their time with webhooks and API calls. That's not, a good use of their time. But it is necessary to actually put these tools in place.
Right. If I'm an investor looking at a founder and I'm thinking about investing in you, I want you doing your market research. I want you out there asking 100 people if
Talking to
they have any
customers.
problem
Yeah,
and if they can use your solution. I want you out there working on an MVP. I want you out there working on your sales traction or developing your user base. I don't want you
absolutely.
figuring out how to make your CRM talk to something else, right?
Exactly. That's not a good use of most founders' time. And so it really is important to find somebody that, can help you implement this stuff without, it. I don't want AI to become another bottleneck in your business. That's not the goal. The goal is to use it to improve your efficiency, not become something else that you have to learn and manage and, figure out how to do on your own.
Yeah, so the value proposition is obvious for solopreneurs, for tech
Absolutely.
founders, early stage tech founders, or even
Absolutely.
even those tech founders that are starting to scale.
Mhm.
Let's talk more about a corporate setting, a bigger business, or an established small business. What are some of the signs that a business or organization could use help in this area?
I think, the biggest sign and one of the first places that I try to kind of implement AI is your lead follow-up. If you have leads falling through the cracks, if you are missing calls and not getting back to people, if you are getting those leads but not, nurturing them through, those are big leaks in your the front end of your client acquisition process that we can fix with AI. So I think that's a big sign is when I hear people say, my my intake team is overwhelmed or they're dropping the ball on stuff. That's a really good place to start. Another place too is anything that's just causing a bottleneck or inefficiency in your business. If you've got manual repetitive tasks, that's like a drain on your employees' mental state, right? Like those types of things are not lighting them up. That is not what they enjoy doing. Let's take that off their plate and use their big brain to actually do the things that matter, and that are going to, make them fulfilled as an employee, but also help, move the business forward as well. So those are 2 points where I think, um, you know, those are the best possible starting points for AI, in a business, is, on your front end, on your lead intake, and then also in your kind of consistent daily processes, automating those and taking some of that off the human plate.
Yeah, I think another sign is if you are a leader at any level, whether you are a frontline manager all the way up to the C suite, and you're saying to yourself, why am I doing this? This is
Absolutely.
this is taking time away from me focusing on strategy, from focusing on the big picture, from focusing on what's going on. If you're a frontline manager, in what's the big picture in the company. If you're a mid-level manager, what's going on big picture in the industry. And if you're at the C-suite, you're focusing like what are the big economic forces that are driving our business. If you're focused on something and saying, why am I doing this? That's another clear sign, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think anything too that feels like, from a founder's perspective, like I'm the only one that knows how to do this, or I'm the only one that can do that. There may be, some very high level things, right, that are, best in a founder's brain. But a lot of times that gap is because they just haven't taught anybody how to do it, or there hasn't been, kind of that adoption at lower levels. And AI can really help with that because we can train the AI to know everything that founder knows, to know all of those processes. It can learn SOPs and, kind of help bring your employees up to speed on a lot of things without, a founder having to dedicate hours of their day to teach, their employees those things.
Yeah, red flag number one for anything if you're a tech founder is if you're saying to yourself, I'm the only one who can do this, I'm the only one capable. Red flag number one on anything
Absolutely.
in
Absolutely.
a tech company.
Yeah, it's a big potential failure point for sure.
So, again, the value proposition is obvious, but it doesn't. Again, you can't just flip a switch and AI works for you. What are some of the questions you ask, whether they're tech founders, startup founders of some other kind, bigger businesses? What are some of the questions you ask about the business and their processes when they come to you for help?
Yeah. So, I walk all of my clients through a 3-step framework process called Align, Automate, Appear. And so, where I start is that alignment phase. And that's really, really important because I need to make sure that there is already enough of a backbone there to train those AI tools and implement those AI tools. What I find a lot of times when I go to, do these founder interviews and get information on their business is there's already a lot of gaps. They may not have a CRM in place yet. They may not know what their customer, they may not be able to verbalize what their customers' top 5 pain points are. There's little things in the brand strategy that I tend to find may not already be mapped out. And the reality is, if I'm going to hand some of the stuff over to AI, that all needs to be dealt with on the front end, right? I can't train the AI if there's nothing to train on. So the very first thing I do is make sure that we fully have all of our, kind of puzzle pieces in place in terms of who we are, what we do, who we help, how we help them. Those are really, really important questions to start with. So I take everybody through kind of a brand strategy boot camp to begin with before we ever, touch an AI tool, because I think that's a really important foundational piece. The next question I kind of ask them is sort of their tolerance level and their risk, willingness to adopt these AI tools. I like to start with things that aren't going to be super impactful immediately on a client. I don't usually want to start right out of the gate with something that's going to be client facing. I like to build those internal tools, workflow processes internally before we start rolling it out to something client facing. But everybody's risk tolerance is a little different there. And it depends on your target market and what you do. There's a much broader willingness to adopt AI when we're talking about maybe scheduling like a plumbing appointment or something that doesn't have a lot of like necessarily human emotion related to it. But on the other hand, if we're talking about something, medical or mental health related, or that's more human led, that may not be the right place to start, with like a voice assistant or something like that. So I really want to evaluate their business and their customers and where we can, kind of be the most impactful without also, alienating their audience or their clients as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important. This has been a lesson about business going back 100, 120 years as we've had modern business, right? If you don't have a brand strategy, if you don't have a strategic vision for the business, if you don't have clear lines of communication, if you don't have standard operating procedures, no amount of technology is ever going to help you solve those problems, right? Those have to be solved first. And then, like in the case of SOPs, right? You've got to get those locked down. And then when you start to see everyone on your team is starting to get that glazed in the eyes look, you can see like, okay, this is becoming a real grind for them.
Yeah.
How do we automate these repetitive tasks?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think honestly, like introducing AI too early into kind of a broken process is probably just going to make it worse, right? Like that's not the goal. The goal is to take a process that's working and improve it or automate it with AI, not to necessarily try to use AI to fix it.
Yeah, and that's not to say you can't use, kind of a basic LLM to say, okay, this is my task, write me an SOP for it, right?
Absolutely.
It's not to say you can't take some baby steps towards it, but at the end of the day, it's all got to fit together, and that only comes from human knowledge and human judgment right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you talked a little about risk tolerance for bringing in certain AI tools. Everybody's kind of in a different place on that.
Yeah.
I'm always curious whether it's about adopting tech or leadership methods, whatever it is we talk to our guests about. As you start bringing about change in an organization, do you ever run into resistance at various levels in the company to what you're bringing in? And then how do you overcome that resistance?
Yeah. And it can be at any level, right? Like sometimes that level of resistance is the founder and, the top C-suite executives, and maybe the employees want it and they don't. They're nervous about it. I see that a lot. I also see the opposite, where the founder or the C-suite is super interested in incorporating AI, but the employees are nervous about it. Maybe they're nervous it's going to replace them. Maybe they're nervous about how to use it. So there's friction at any given point, and sometimes it's the entire organization. I do a lot of just kind of educating and explaining, here's what's possible, here's what's not likely to happen. Terminator's not here to take over your business. That's not what's happening here. And so I do a lot of just kind of change management there. And so, those fears, I get it. And there certainly is bad AI out there, and there certainly are ways that you probably shouldn't implement it. And the goal is to avoid those entirely. And, knowing what those are and knowing how to not use AI is just as important as knowing how and when to use it. I really start with trying to educate on the value. And then also, I put a lot of guardrails and data privacy and things like that in place. So going through those can also really kind of help, particularly founders that might be nervous about what level of data is going to be exposed or what are we putting out there. I think that, can kind of soften the initial fears as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because a lot of times we think about this is that the employees want the automation, right?
Yep.
They want to make their lives easier. And sometimes senior leaders are like, well, that's good, but we're not ready yet. But you brought up something very important that I think we do need to talk about, and is important for founders, especially tech founders. You may be getting this pressure to automate, to bring in AI tech or other tech from your investors. You may, and not just in tech. You may be, we see a lot of private equity getting involved in the medical field, the med spa business, that kind of thing. And you may be reluctant, you may be resistant to bringing these things on, but you've got investors telling you you've got to do it. How do we turn that resistance into real questions we can ask that reflect our concerns?
Yeah, one thing I say often is, AI is coming for your business, whether you like it or not. And, I get it and I get the resistance, but if you aren't already starting to implement AI right now in 2026, it may still feel okay. You might be, able to push back on your investors, you might be able to, talk your employees out of it. In 2 years, it's not going to feel okay anymore. Your competitors are going to be so far ahead if in 2 years you're still having this conversation. So I think that's an important starting point, is this is here. It's not going away. This isn't a bubble that's going to burst. This is not a fad. AI is the way we're moving forward, and we've got to start adopting it, into your business now before it's already too late. To me, in a lot of ways, if you haven't already started, you're already getting a little behind now. So we need to move, now. So in terms of questions, that you can ask, I think the first is, what am I afraid of? What is the big fear here? Is it data privacy? Is it losing employees? I hear that one a lot. I'm worried that, well, I'm going to have to, if I do this, I'm going to have to let people go, and I don't want to do that. I hear, I'm worried about my brand being watered down, and I'm worried that our clients are going to know we're using AI, and they're not going to like that. They're not going to want us to. They're not going to trust me anymore because I'm using AI. It's not going to feel authentic. So I think naming that fear is the first step, right? Like, what is the fear? What is the concern? And then we can kind of work backwards from there. And is that really true? In the case of a brand getting watered down, trained AI tools will enhance and amplify what you do. You're right. If you're going into Chat GPT, the free version out of nowhere, and asking it to write your social media content, you're right. You're going to get watered down generic slop that you shouldn't put out there. But if you have highly trained tools that understand your brand and your clients, and there is a human in the loop, you can produce better, more content that's going to amplify your message and get you in front of a broader audience. And that's a win. That helps you help more people. That's a good thing. So that's kind of one of the fears I hear, and a way to kind of manage that expectation. The other one, that I hear a lot is people saying, well, my employees are going to feel like they're going to get replaced, or I'm worried that, I'm going to, have to start letting people go because my investors are going to want me to use AI instead of, these humans. And again, I think what we want is to train your employees to use AI. I want, your employees to use it to free up space and time for them to do things that really matter, and not, maybe those kind of repetitive manual tasks. So I don't think it has to replace jobs. It certainly can. And there's an argument for that. And, maybe that makes sense in certain places, but it doesn't have to replace a human. It can just improve what a human is already doing, or allow them to do other things. I see a lot of like role combining now. It used to be that maybe you needed a 12-person marketing team, you needed a video specialist, you needed a copywriter, you needed a social media expert. And maybe now, with the right AI tools, maybe we can do all of that with 4 people instead of 12. So I do see it kind of combining and consolidating a lot of roles, but I think that just adds to the efficiency of it. And it can give you a little bit more brand control, because you don't have 12 people in the room who all have a slightly different opinion on the direction or where something should go. A lot of times AI can serve as a bit of a source of truth and keep you on track with your brand. And I think that's an important benefit as well.
Yeah, it brings up 2 really important key leadership points, just general leadership points. One is, if you're resistant to something, if you're having a problem with something, one, you've got to ask good questions, right?
Absolutely.
And then you've got to say to yourself, am I satisfied with the answer I got? And if I'm not satisfied with the answer, did I ask the question? Maybe it wasn't clear, maybe it was ambiguous.
Yep.
Or maybe I need to ask some follow-up questions. And that's, again, that has nothing to do with tech. That's just kind of a key strategic leadership principle. And the other really important thing we need to think about as leaders is, I'm a big believer that our number one job as leaders is developing the future leaders coming up behind us. When we shrink these teams from 12 people to 4 people, and we have 4 much more strategy, big picture oriented people, that's great, because they had the entry level on the front line job knowledge to become that person. We have to think about the future of our companies. Is, where are we going to get those leaders in the future if the AI is doing all the day-to-day work? We have to think really consciously about how we develop our future leaders.
Absolutely.
All right, so I want to pull it all the way back to top level.
Okay.
What are some key brand strategy principles we should be thinking about in our businesses before we start trying to use AI and automate and optimize the work? Let's get into the brand strategy stuff for a little bit.
Yeah. So, the biggest one is, you need to clearly define who your customer is and what their pain points are. What are, I always ask people, and like, if a customer can come to you and say, these are the 5 things, that are the biggest struggle for me, what are those? And you need to be able to define that, because those are your value proposition points. We need to know what problem we're solving for them in order to be able to speak to them about how we're going to solve it. So I think that's step one. And I think that becomes even before the how we're solving the problem, is understanding your client and your customer and what they need you to do for them. And so again, that's one of those things that's a hole that can't be plugged with AI. We need to be able to define our ideal customer and their problems and how we're going to solve them before we try to train AI on that. So I think that's kind of the starting point for me. I think the second one for brand strategy too is, what are the objections that we're going to get? So I've got a solution. We know our customer, but what are they going to come back with us and say? Well, yes, but, or here's my concern. So knowing what those objections are going to be, and then knowing how to manage them or even get ahead of them before they have a chance to object, is probably the second most important piece.
Yeah, those are great. Those are things that even though AI can help you with the brainstorming, these are decisions you've got to make as a founder or an executive, and AI can't really help you make those decisions yet.
Right. And I use it all the time to, kind of think tank, to bounce things off of. Sometimes it gives me a different perspective than, I would have myself, or that even, one of my employees might have. So it can be a great brainstorming tool. But I think you still want your strategy to be human led, because you're helping other humans. And so I think that's really important, to be able to clearly define that human to human connection, and then incorporate AI to help you execute.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Can you give us an example, whether it's someone you're working with or someone you've just kind of seen out in the world, a brand that's doing this really well? They've got the human stuff locked down, and then they're implementing technology in a really savvy way.
Yeah. So, I think a good example for me is, I loved last year, I believe it was the Spotify founder said, show me that the job can't be done by AI before I create a role, before I fill it with a human. Show me that AI can't do it. And I think that's a very strong position on AI. And I like it because I think it shows, okay, we accept that there are things that can be completely done by AI now. And it's not saying I don't want any human team members. It's not saying I don't want to continue to grow our human staff. It's just saying, let's find those roles that can be filled, and let's do that with AI. So I really liked that position. I kind of adopted in my own world. It's like, I want to see that it can't be done by AI before I try to do it a different way. And obviously that's, a different approach than a lot of people may be taking, because I'm living in AI all day, every day. But I think that's a really cool way to think about it, is kind of becoming an AI first world. Is, okay, let's start there, and then see what we need to add on the human aspect. So I like that strategy that they're taking, and I am interested to see kind of how that maps out for them.
Yeah, and what I really love about that, and maybe I'm reading a little too much into it, but it's my show, so I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah.
There is an implied conversation about whether this role is necessary. Right. We have that conversation first. Is this role necessary? Okay, we agree. This role is necessary. These tasks are necessary, because every company has a bunch of roles that aren't necessary.
Sure.
Look, we just all know that's true, right? And then every company has a bunch of roles that are necessary that they're having trouble filling, right? So.
Right. Or those people are really overwhelmed. I mean, we see that a lot in those kind of higher level positions, right? It's like, those are the people that are burning out. Those are the people that are really overwhelmed, that, are working 80 hours a week. So if we can lighten some of that load with AI, or if we can divert some of those positions to support that type of role, that can be really helpful as well.
Yeah. So it's great, because we have this, whether it's overt or implied, this conversation about, is this role necessary? And then, okay, we agree this role is necessary. What are the tasks that are necessary for this role to be done? And then which ones can be done by AI?
Yep.
Show me it can't be done by AI. Okay, what's left is what a human does. AI does the rest, right?
Absolutely.
Strategy to task. We talk about it in the military all the time. Start with the is it necessary and get all the way down to what can an AI do? And then that frees up my human to do all the things the AI can't do.
Absolutely. I think it also allows you to hire better as well, because before you may have had a role that had a ton of like administrative work attached to it, but it also needed some higher level strategy. And that may have been hard to fill because somebody who is capable of that higher level strategy doesn't want to do maybe that administrative work. And so maybe that made it hard to fill, or you kind of had to compromise with, a lower level, executive in that role versus, if it was just the strategy and the high level execution. So I think it gives you a little bit more bargaining power in the hiring market, and you can get more specialized skill out of positions now, because they don't necessarily have to do everything anymore. You can, if you need, this job and you need somebody great to do just that, we don't have to try to like shoehorn them into, a full-time role where they're also doing, touching 10 other things that might not be their specialty. So I think it can be really powerful when you're hiring as well, because we can cut down on some of the fluff of some of these roles.
Right. Get the humans focused on the things human needs to be focused on. I love that. Okay. I want to take a break from the business questions. I want to play a game. Are you up for a game?
Well, let's do it.
All right. The name of this game is Rapid Response. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to mind.
Boy. Okay.
Do not be fooled by the word rapid. You don't have to give one-word answers. Elaborate as much or as little as you'd like to. We just want to get to know you a little bit better, okay?
Sure.
All right. Jenna Nelson, rapid response round. Your time begins now. A podcast recommendation.
Oh, Millionaire Mindset.
Oh, that's a very good one. Yeah. What is a practice you'd like to see more people embrace?
Walking more.
Also a good one. Get those steps in.
Yeah.
Someone we should all be paying attention to.
Ooh, I'm a little biased, but I would say Sam Altman. I love the trajectory that OpenAI is taking and kind of their methodology behind it, and I think that's absolutely one we all need to be watching.
I think Sam is definitely someone we should be watching. What I have found interesting is over the last couple of weeks, I've heard a number of podcast interviews with his co-CEO and some of the rest of his executive team, and I think everybody on that C-suite team, that executive team at OpenAI and the other AI companies are certainly worth paying attention to.
Absolutely.
What is either your get pumped up song or your walk on music?
Ooh, it's a unknown one, but there's a band called the Ready Set, and the song is called Fangs, and it's kind of my like pump up song. I run a lot of marathons. It's always like my kind of starter, before the start line type of deal.
All right, everybody go check that out. I don't know it, so I'm going to have to go check it out. The biggest influence in your life?
Ooh. I would say my grandfather. He's passed away now, but truly, to this day, I feel like I kind of model a lot of my responses and the way I handle things around, how he, embraced me as a child and how, I watched him as an adult. So I think that's the biggest one.
All right. A book everyone should read.
Ooh, that's a good one. I really loved the 12-week year. I have been kind of implementing that like 12-week. I was always a big like New Year's person. Like I liked to plan at the end of the year and like get kind of ready for the new year. But that's a really long cycle, and that's a lot amount of time that like if something's not working, but you continue to let it not work for a year. So I really liked the 12-week year and that kind of like 12-week, treating it like a year process. Like this is my goal for 12 weeks and getting it done. I've really loved that kind of method.
Yeah, there's a lot of research behind rituals behind ending one thing and beginning new things improve productivity. So that's really
Absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah.
What is your favorite recreational activity?
Running.
All right. And your dream vacation spot?
Ooh, Thailand, and I'm going this October, and I'm really excited. Other than the 27-hour flight.
Yeah, I've been to Australia, I've been to Guam, I've been places over kind of that way. The flight is rough, even when you're leaving from LA.
Yeah. It's I've always had this on my bucket list, so I'm very excited about it. But it's a haul.
Besides AI, what is a trend you're excited about?
I really love that the 90s are kind of coming back right now. Like I'm liking the kind of color palettes and fashion and just kind of, I feel like we went into like a big tech kind of change post millennium, and like we're rolling that back a little bit. Like kids are playing outside again, like in their neighborhoods and stuff. But I kind of love what's happening there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that as well. For those of you who weren't there, we had a lot of fun in the 90s.
Yeah.
After we got through that initial early 90s recession up until the .com bust, we had a lot of fun in the 90s, and we were pretty happy.
I agree. It was a good era. Yeah.
Last one. Favorite sports team or player?
I graduated from the University of Central Florida, and I cheered there, and so I take UCF football very seriously.
All right. Well, thanks for playing our game.
Yeah,
it's nice to get to know you in a way that our other questions about AI and business might not have got us there. We talked a lot about the big picture stuff already, and now I want to narrow down into the nuts and bolts of how you help people. How can we do this? How can we get started on our own? So you talked a little bit about the framework, the 3-part framework you use. Can you go into a little more detail on each of those areas?
Yeah. So, to restate it, so it's align, automate, appear. And I'm really particular about wanting to move clients through that framework in that order. A lot of times people will come to me, and they're already ready for, I want to automate everything. I want to, and great, we're going to get there. But I want to take you through that alignment phase first, because as we've already talked about, if there's holes in your brand strategy, if there are things that aren't working right, if there's not an SOP in place yet, it's not time to automate yet. We're too far ahead there. So in the alignment phase, again, I do, kind of a brand strategy boot camp where I take everybody through everything that really I need to know to train an AI to know everything it needs to know about its business. So we start with that alignment. And one thing that I do in that alignment phase is we build them an AI brand manager. And that becomes the source of knowledge and truth for their business. It gets used internally. It can get used for content. We build off of that. But I want that one central knowledge source that can't really be, it doesn't have a bad day. It doesn't tend, obviously AI hallucinations are real, but it doesn't, go off brand. It doesn't, change its mind. So we build that kind of central source of knowledge, and it gets used a lot internally because it can answer questions about the brand or about the company that maybe before an employee would run and, kind of bother their manager and ask, that kind of question, they're interrupting their workflow. Well, now you can ask those questions of your internal AI tool and, get it instantly and kind of move on without having to walk down the hallway or, interrupt a meeting type of deal. So that alignment phase, I think, is really important. And you kind of leave with this like very powerful internal use tool. And then the second phase of that then is automate. So once, I know we've got the alignment in place, we've got the core tool, then I bring them into automations. And that's where we're looking at what are those processes? What are the bottlenecks? What is the founder doing that they shouldn't be doing? What are high level executives doing that they shouldn't be doing? And so we start trying to fill those holes, and that looks a little differently for everybody. Sometimes it's a voice AI agent to take calls that aren't being answered. Sometimes it's nurturing workflows. It just depends on, the business and where they're at. So the automate phase is really important for then kind of removing everything, like we just talked about, like what can I not automate? What needs to stay with the human? Let's leave it there. But what can we kind of take off of that plate and pull out of the human mix here? So that's the second phase. And then the third phase is appear. If no one can find you, if you aren't getting the visibility that you need, either digitally or in your local market, then you're not getting the leads, you're not getting the customers, right? And that's really important. But I don't ever want to start anybody there, because there's a good possibility that there's something already wrong in their brand strategy, or maybe the reason that they can't go out and get more business is because they're manually following up with every lead. So I feel really strongly about taking them through that kind of journey to get there. But once we get to that appear phase, then we're looking at ways that, okay, now we've taken all this stuff off your plate. We've taken, we're automating things. We've consolidated what you have to do. Now you've got the time and ability to go out and create new products, to go speak in public, to be on podcasts, to network, to do more sales calls, that kind of thing. So that becomes an important part of that phase too. And a lot of what we focus on in kind of the appear phase also is that digital search has changed dramatically. Nobody is going to Google anymore and clicking down, 10 links to get what they want. If you're a local business and you're not showing up in the map pack, or if you are a digital business and you're not getting quoted in the AI answer snippets, or they can't find you on ChatGPT, you are missing a big percentage of web traffic. We're seeing everywhere. We're seeing click-through rates go down. We're seeing website traffic go down because people want the answer. They want it quick. They want to ask follow-up questions, and they want to get what they need and move on. Nobody is reading, through 10 pages of your website anymore. That's just not where we're at in 2026. So a lot of that appear framework focuses on what's working right now in the digital world. We're focusing on optimizing for answer engine optimization, generative engine optimization. And it's not to say SEO is not dead. There's a lot to be said about, good quality SEO, but we just need to invite their other friends, kind of to the mix here, because you can't just rely on Google search anymore. So that's a big piece of that appear phase as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That's a point I want to underline, is it's not enough to say, what can AI do for me? We have to ask ourselves, how does AI see me, see my brand, see my company? And that's something I'm working through right now with this podcast, with my other podcasts, with my companies and the work I do, is I'm thinking about now, how do I get seen by AI, and what is it that AI is seeing about me, so that that's going into whether it is going into that top gray box on a search engine, that AI summary, or it's when someone goes and asks an LLM a question, how do I make sure that something about me goes into that answer?
Goes into that. Yeah, absolutely. And that is going to be so key moving forward. It's important right now. Again, 6 months from now, it's just going to compound, and making sure that your content, it's interesting because what we have to do with content now is it needs to be human readable, right? Like we want a human to be able to read your website and understand it, and it should make sense. But it also needs to be machine readable now, because we need the AI tools to be able to scan it, learn it, and machines and humans don't interpret a web page in the same way. They don't see your brand and your pretty color. That's not what it's looking for. It's looking for the structure. It's looking for those concise summaries. So formatting our content in ways that can be scraped by the LLMs or can, show up in the answer snippets are really, really important. And if you're only optimizing for, Google click-through traffic, you're leaving a lot on the table right now.
Yeah, this is what we in the Air Force, back when I was doing that, this is what we would have called decision quality information for a senior leader or decision maker to use to make a decision. And so we have to think in a couple ways about this, right? How do we make decision quality information for an AI to grab and package into even more decision quality information for a human to make a decision with?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really tricky balance. And, getting it right is really hard. And that's a lot of what I do is, help them, understand how a page needs to be formatted, the importance of structured schema and things like that. So that is a really big key. And I think you said it well. It's like we talk a lot about like, what can AI do for me? Well, there's also what do I need to be doing for AI too, is kind of a part of the equation.
Yeah. Okay. So I've saved these questions for the end because I wanted people to listen to the leadership and strategy stuff. If you're smart with tech and AI and you already know the answer to these questions, go ahead and skip ahead a couple of minutes. So I want to get into real nuts and bolts here.
Yeah.
Tell us what an AI agent is. How's it different from a custom GPT? How's it different than just typing questions into an LLM? And why are all three important and we need to use all three?
Yeah. So an agent has a specific job. So agents typically do things. So you can design an AI agent to grab data and add it to a spreadsheet and format that spreadsheet. You can get an AI agent that can scrape, a website and, come up with equations for things that you need. Agents do things. LLMs, on the other hand, are query-based conversation style tools that can do things. You can ask an LLM to write you a summary of something, but you have to lead that process with it. An agent can be autonomous. An agent, once trained and once put in place, it can function in the background without you directing it every time. A custom GPT or just an LLM in general has to be prompted. It has to be led by something. And to that point, a custom GPT, and we use these a lot, they're one of my favorite things, but the way that differs from just a regular LLM is that a custom GPT is typically designed to have a very specific goal. And it's meant to essentially compartmentalize a set of data or a brand or a role. So it does one very specific thing, whereas, just using, Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini can do essentially everything. But the power really comes in those custom GPTs because you can get so specific to the task that you need it to do. That, it can be way more powerful than just using, a chat on its own.
Absolutely. I love that. So hopefully we've convinced some folks, okay, it's time to embrace AI today. I know we've got a bunch of audience who are kind of playing with it as well. And then we've got folks who are really sophisticated with it. But for someone who's just getting started with an LLM, whether they haven't ever touched it before or they've been using it a little bit, what's your best advice for training the model to help them in the best way possible?
Yeah. So my first one is to pick a platform and then stick with it. Everybody has their favorite. A lot of people like Claude, a lot of people like Grok, a lot of people like ChatGPT, but find yours and then stick with it, because the reality is it learns from you. You're going to train it. And that reinforcement learning of continuing to use it, to continuing to kind of, come back to it and say, nope, this, or yes, I like that, but that reinforcement learning is really, really important. So if you're constantly trying to hop between every different platform, you're going to drive yourself crazy and you're not going to get as good of result, as if you pick one and stick with it. There's not necessarily a wrong answer. I get asked all the time, which is the best one, and the best one is the one that you know and use. That's the answer. So in terms of actually training it, and there's lots of resources out there, and depending on how you're going to train it, but the most important thing is that you're feeding it good data. You want to make sure that you're giving it concise data that can support the goal of what you're doing. I like to give a lot of examples and kind of role play with it a little bit in the training process of, okay, if I ask for this, what would you give me? And then correct it. And that's something I tell people all the time too, is, if you ask ChatGPT to write you a blog post and you take that blog post and then you go into WordPress and you're editing it and you're changing stuff, take all of that back and give it back to the LLM and say, this was my final version. This is why I changed it. This is what I changed, because that reinforces that process and that learning for that tool. If you just let it think it did great, you use that blog post, it's going to do the same thing over and over again, right? It's not going to get better. So I always say, treat training an AI tool like you would treat training an employee. Treat it like your executive assistant. Everything that you'd want an executive assistant to know, your trained, Thread or ChatGPT, whatever you're using, needs to be the same way. So if it does something wrong, tell it. If you want it to do something differently, tell it. And if you change your processes, tell it. And then the other thing I really recommend too is you need to audit it every so often. So, at minimum for my clients, we do it monthly, but at minimum, maybe quarterly. Go through and ask it, tell me everything you know about me or about my business or about, and filter out what may have changed or what's new, what's different. If you're using ChatGPT, go through your custom instructions every so often and see if there's things, you need to update and change there. Maybe you're no longer offering this particular service anymore. Let's take that out. So auditing it and cleaning it up every so often is an important part of the data integrity as well.
Yeah, don't skip those steps, because there are times I skip those steps and said, I don't have time for this today. And then after 10 times of that, I get 3 weeks down the road. I'm like, God, I wish I had just given the feedback.
Done it. Absolutely. We do it monthly on every client tool. We just go through an audit and check it out. And I think that that's really important. And it stops it from drifting, right? Because once it's drifted too far, it's a lot harder to pull it back. So if you can get it, before it starts going, too far in the wrong direction, that's way better.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned about working with people since diving so deep into artificial intelligence?
Oh, about people. I think it's that, humans we're emotion led, right? And everything that we do comes from some sort of emotional place, good or bad. And so you have to factor that in when you're talking to people. You have to factor in that, okay, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they don't understand what I'm telling them, or this is new and scary to them. And so you have to adapt the way you talk to people and when you talk to them and how you talk to them based on what's going on and their personality too. That's really relevant. Whereas on the other hand, with AI, it doesn't get its feelings hurt. It doesn't have a bad day. It doesn't need you to handhold it in the same way. You don't have to tell it please. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. And so I think knowing that's something I'm really conscious of at this point, because I'm working with AI tools so much, is like I have to shift gears when I go and train or talk to people, because I get so used to being data driven and being succinct and concise and just getting to the point because that's all the AI wants, whereas people need a little bit, more interaction and personality behind it. So that's an interesting, I'm kind of interested to see how that develops, kind of as we move forward in this AI world is like, how do we keep, our human led emotion in this bucket and not, lose our humanity while talking to AI, essentially.
All right. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. What's coming up for you in the next few months?
Yeah, so I'm speaking at AI in Action in March of this year, and I'm actually talking about the zero click visibility, and we're going to do a live. This conference is specifically it's action oriented. It's not just theory. It's not just talking about it. Like everybody that speaks gives you something to do. You leave with assets. And so I'm personally walking through a full landing page build that is optimized for AEO, GEO to be, scraped by AI. So we're going to talk through kind of the pillars of this new world order and how to structure your content in a way that can be machine readable. So that's what I'm talking about. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm right now doing a big push on my visibility accelerator program, which is a lot of that AEO, GEO stuff built together. So this conference kind of supports. It's a little peek behind the curtain, if you will, into the visibility accelerator and how to, structure your content to be found in 2026. So I'm excited about that.
Well, that sounds fantastic. This has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for joining us today, Jenna. Where can everyone find you so they can also thank you for joining us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on all the socials, but in particular, I spend a lot of time on YouTube. I'm at Her AI Agency, and I do a lot of just kind of like short trainings. I'm not into like doing 3-hour long courses. It's 15, 20 minutes, things you can use and implement right away. So definitely, kind of check me out on YouTube if it's something that you've been kind of dabbling in, but you're looking for like a good starter place. My YouTube channel is really good for that. But otherwise, I'm on Facebook and Instagram and the website and all those things.
Fantastic. Well, we'll link all those things up in the notes so no one has to go look for them. Thank you again for being here today, Jenna. I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. If you found this conversation valuable, go ahead and share it with someone who can use it. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe. And since I'm asking everybody for favors, if you're on a platform where you can leave a review, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us build our audience and get these amazing interviews out with these amazing people to more and more people. So go out there, do great things today. Onward and upward.